I was never one for sappy goodbyes or mulling over the whiffs of life. Amelia, 35, a manager, that was enough of an introduction for anyone there. I was standing tall, suitcase gripping my sweating palm. The creak of those steps under my weight was like a soundtrack to this not-so-graceful exit. At the bottom of the stairs, Jeremy leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, the ghost of a smirk playing on his face. It was the smirk that said, "You won't last a week without my money." I despised that smirk. Linda, the queen of passive-aggressive comments, was perched on the arm of the plush love seat, a throne she made from judgments and slee digs. "My boy always did like 'em headstrong," she said, inspecting her perfectly manicured nails. Zoe, the new trophy, was a humanized Barbie perched awkwardly on the edge of the couch. Her legs were crossed so tight I wondered if she could feel her toes. I packed my things, I managed, my voice steady but my insides turning. It felt strange declaring something so mundane at a moment that felt like the end of an era. Jeremy chuckled. An infuriating sound. "What? No tears, Amelia?" He prodded, finding humor in what he thought was my misery. It was typical Jeremy, kicking when he thought you were down. "Not for you," I shot back, clenching my jaw to keep my composure. Linda's laugh slithered out next, sharp as a knife. "Why don't you join us for dinner one last time?" There was a challenge in her eyes, daring me to break, to show the crack in the armor I spent years fortifying. The idea was ludicrous. Who in their right mind would have a farewell dinner with their ex and a shiny new thing? But I couldn't resist the opportunity to show them that I wasn't leaving as the defeated wife. I said, surprising even myself, "Sure, could be fun." Zoe's eyes shot up in surprise, not expecting the guest of dishonor to accept a seat at this twisted table. Jeremy's smirk fell a notch. "Great," he said. "I'll get the wine." It was his white flag, his last attempt at playing the courteous host. Linda simply sniffed, turning her attention to Zoe. "Dear, why don't you help Jeremy with the wine, the good stuff upstairs? You remember where it is," she said, sending Zoe off like a child on an errand. As Zoe scampered off, I noticed her heels were too high, her steps uncertain. The poor girl was walking on stilts, trying to measure up in a world where the bar was set impossibly high. "It's going to be a long night," I mumbled under my breath, realizing that this dinner was more a game of chess than a meal. Every word would have to be calculated if I was to walk out with my head still held high. The dining room had an awkward tension hanging in the air, contrasting with the clinking sound of cutlery. Linda, sitting at the head of the table, smirked as she turned towards me. "Enjoy the meal, darling. It's not every day you sit down to something that hasn't been microwaved." I fixed a smile, keeping my tone even. "Thanks, Linda. It's been hard to find time between work hours. Not like I've got the luxury to stay home." Across from me, Jeremy stirred in his seat, a hint of red creeping up his neck. "I'm on it, you know. Jobs don't just fall out of the sky, and the last place, they didn't know a good worker when they saw one." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "A good worker, Jay? They practically threw you out. How much was it you cost? Couple thousand?" Zoe, a hint of curiosity painted on her otherwise perfect face, forked a salad leaf, not eating, just poking. "A few thousand." Jeremy's jaw tensed, his hand tightening around his knife. "That was blown way out of proportion. I made a small mistake, Amelia. They were just looking for someone to pin it on. I guess being late most days and missing deadlines is small now," I said coolly, taking a sip from my glass. Linda chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Well, accidents happen, right? But Zoe dear, you must be careful. Clumsy can sometimes run in the family." Zoe gave a tight-lipped smile, her eyes still fixed on her unperturbed plate. "I believe everyone has a bad day now and then, right, Jeremy?" Jeremy shot a glance at Zoe, then back at me. He was desperate to change the subject. "Let's not dwell on the past. I'm focusing on the future." I leaned back in my chair. "Sounds grand, Jay, hopefully. This time the future doesn't have a repeat ending." As the uncomfortable silence settles, Linda clears her throat, a signal for a subject change. So, any plans after today, dear? I glance around the table, my resolve firm. First good night's sleep in months, I reckon. Zoe, finally putting down her fork, looks up. There's a flash of something, pity maybe, or curiosity. Sounds nice? Actually, Jeremy, eager for an ally, turns to Zoe. Babe, tell Amelia about the job you were telling me about. Zoe nods, a little spark of enthusiasm in her voice. Oh, it's nothing much. Just an opening in the admin department. Might be something for you to look at. I look at her, really look, and there's something genuine there. I'm surprised. Thanks, Zoe. Might just take a look at that. The meal continues, the earlier sparks of tension drowned out by mundane chatter. The clinking of cutlery against the plates fills the room as Linda keeps eyeing me like a hawk, waiting to swoop down with another snarky comment. So tell me, she says, leaning back in her chair with a smirk. Still living out of that tiny apartment? I push the salad around my plate, barely suppressing a smile. Actually, Linda, I'll be moving soon. Got a little place closer to work now. It's mine. Jeremy chokes on his drink, coughing into his napkin, while his mom's eyebrows shoot up. You a house? Where'd you get that sort of cash? He sputters. Well, if you'd asked me anything about my life in the past year, I say, cutting into my steak, you'd know about the money Grandma left me. All 700 of it. His greedy eyes widen, and I can almost see the dollar signs flashing in them. Wait, that's half mine. Jeremy blurts, his fork clattering onto the plate. His mother chimes in, like clockwork. Absolutely, Jeremy. Married means shared assets. But I lean back in my chair and can't help but let out a laugh. Funny how you'd forget the prenup you shoved in my face. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours, wasn't it? Zoe, sitting next to Jeremy with a plate of untouched food, looks at me with a mix of shock and disgust. Poor thing probably didn't sign up for this soap opera. Jeremy's face turns tomato red. That's before I knew you were coming into money, he shouts. I take another bite, savoring not just the meal but the moment. I guess that's just tough luck, I say, giving him a wink. Zoe's eyes dart between us, clearly regretting her pick for the night. Maybe for more than just tonight. And Jeremy? Well, he's in full tantrum mode now, his napkin thrown down with a dramatic flourish. You know what? This is crap. You can't just. I cut him off. Oh, but I can. And it seems like I just did. Dinner goes on, and with every petty jab they throw, I parry with the ease of someone with nothing to lose. Because in this tacky dining room with its gaudy chandelier and suffocating small talk, I've never felt freer. After all, there's no place like my own new home, however small and on the other side of town it may be. The sharp scent of roasted chicken mingled with the tang of tension in the air. The dining room felt smaller with every word Linda spat out, and tomorrow. Linda's cheeks flushed the same shade as the wine in her glass. I'm calling Mark. You'll be out of a job before you can say unemployment. Everyone at the table could hear the scrape of knife against the plate as Jeremy cut into his chicken a little too forcefully. The sound rang out like an alarm, but I couldn't help it. I started laughing. It bubbled out uncontrollably, a response so absurd against the backdrop of Linda's scowl. What's so funny? Linda practically hissed, her fork covering midair. Jeremy's eyes were wide like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The room went still, ready for the drama to explode. Straightening up, I wiped the corner of my eye, still chuckling. You too, I said, shaking my head. You don't know the half of it. Their gazes were like hooks, waiting for the punchline. 4 months ago, I landed a new job. Head of department, big trading company. Paychecks double what I used to make. Silence slammed into the room like a wave. Linda's fork dropped with a clatter. But it was Jeremy's face I savored. The mix of horror and envy was almost delicious. No, Jeremy finally muttered, his voice a mix of disbelief and resentment. Yep, I popped that pea like bubblegum. And as for calling in favors, I don't need your connections anymore, Linda. Then, as if on cue, the doorbell rang. That'll be the movers, I said, shoving my chair back. The screech of its legs against the floor was a fitting soundtrack to Linda's dropped jaw. I sauntered to the door, heart pounding but free, opening it. There they were, a couple of burly guys with Hank's Moving Company stitched on their caps. "We're here for your stuff," one of them asked, more stating than questioning. "Yep, everything that belongs to me that I acquired even before I got involved with my hubby," I said, hitching a thumb toward the dining room where my soon-to-be ex-life was crumbling. The movers shrugged and shuffled by, heading straight for the dining room. Their heavy boots thudded on the hardwood, every step a nail in the coffin of this uncomfortable evening. Linda was standing now, her napkin forgotten on her plate. "You can't do this," she said, but the bite was gone from her voice. "Oh, but I am." There was a sense of joy saying that out loud, watching her struggle for words. Jeremy was hunched at the table, his face buried in his palms, the lines of his back tight like a strung bow. "Come on, don't do this. Not the sofa. Remember our movie nights?" His voice was a soft plea, a distant echo from a time that felt like a different life. I shook my head firmly. "The sofa's mine. Jay bought it with my own cash, and you know it." Turning to the movers, I pointed at the bulky behemoth of a couch. "That thing needs to go first. Careful with it, it's pricier than it looks." Zoe sat frozen, her eyes wide like saucers. She looked like she wanted to melt into the woodwork. Linda was still shaking her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're cleaning us out, girl." "What are we supposed to sit on? The floor?" Should have thought of that before Jeremy decided to play house with Miss Sunshine here. I didn't bother hiding the bitterness as I swept my hand towards Zoe. The movers were a symphony of grunts and commands, hefting up my furniture with practiced ease. The TV came off the wall with a pop, the dining table was dismantled with a clatter, and even the Dan washing machine was unhooked with a series of clangs and splashes. Jeremy finally stood up, pushing away from the table. "You think you've won." His voice wobbled with anger, his nostrils flaring. "Checkmate," I quipped. Heading back towards the kitchen, plates of uneaten food gazed up at me as I grabbed a bottle of soda, popping the cap and taking a swig. It wasn't champagne, but the fizz tasted like victory. The movers began hauling boxes, the heavy sound of cardboard thumping against the front door as they passed in and out. I walked back into the dining room, grabbing a few last personal items, a picture frame, a ceramic cat Jeremy always hated, and my favorite mug. All right, but the car too." Jeremy stood up, his face flushed a deep red. "You can't be serious. How am I supposed to get to work?" I fished the car keys from my pocket, twirling them around my finger. "You should have read the fine print, baby. That car's in my name." I tossed the keys to one of the movers. "Park it outside my new place, will you?" By the time we were done, the house was as bare as a skeleton, stripped clean. Linda sat on the hardwood floor, her back against the wall, while Jeremy stared through the gaping space where the TV once was, and before. I turned to leave with one last look at the shell of our shared past. "You should thank me, really. It's not every day you get a fresh start, free from all the old junk." Linda was fuming, her hands clenched into fists that kept opening and closing. "You're nothing without this family," she spat out, every word a poison dart. Funny thing was, I felt lighter than I had in years. I looked at her, at Jeremy, at the life I was leaving behind. Jeremy watched me, eyes reading his chest heaving like he was running out of air. Greed, anger, regret. They were written all over him. And I knew, even as I turned my back on that chapter, I would never forget that look. Escaping the clamor of Jeremy's house, I breathed deep. The cool air was a slap to my skin, a wake-up call. I was free, but Jeremy wasn't going to let go without a fight. "You think you've won, huh?" Jeremy's voice came from behind the door. "You'll regret this, mark my words. You'll end up just an old hat with a bunch of cats." I could hear the anger boiling in his veins, but I didn't care. Done was done, and I was out of there. I was nearly at my car when the front door burst open again. There was Jeremy, red-faced and pompous. "You know I got so now. She's half your age and twice as hot." His barb was meant to wound, but it missed its mark because right then Zoe herself appeared, flinging Jeremy's arm off her like it was a filthy rag. "Keep dreaming, Jay," she snapped. She didn't even glance my way as she stomped down the steps, fury in her heels. She was done playing the pretty little girlfriend prop. Jeremy stumbled after her like a man who'd just been kicked in the gut. "Zoe, babe, don't be like that, come on." But Zoe spun around, and the look she shot him would have curdled milk. "Like what, Jeremy? Like someone who just saw the light? You're a jerk, and your mama. She's a dictator in a floral apron. I ain't marrying into this circus." The color drained from Jeremy's face quicker than a leak in a balloon. He spluttered, "No comebacks, no charm. This is it, Jeremy. We are done." Zoe's words were like nails in a coffin, precise and final. Jeremy's mother, Linda, had appeared in the doorway too, her face twisted like she'd swallowed something nasty. "Zoe, you can't leave my boy. We have plans for you," she hissed, probably thinking of wedding bells and grandkids, but Zoe wasn't having a bar of it. I said, "I'm done. Go find another puppet for your little show." She stormed off, her heels clicking like a ticking time bomb. There I was, leaning against my car, trying real hard not to let the grin split my face. Watching Jeremy and Linda shrink in the rearview mirror felt better than I'd imagined. "Hey, and don't think you've gotten away with this," Jeremy was shouting, but his words were like rain against my car window, persistent but insignificant. I rolled down the window a sliver, just enough to let my voice carry. "Actually, I think I just did." I gave him a look, one that said I knew I'd won, then rolled the window back up before he could spew another word. I hit the gas and didn't look back. In my rear view, Jeremy's figure got smaller, his rage drowned out by the growl of the engine. Ahead of me, the street stretched out, the night just beginning to shimmer with possibilities. Looking at the empty seat next to me, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of something like triumph, sweet and raw. No regrets, no looking back, I mused. Tonight, the getaway was all the dinner I needed. When my phone buzzed that morning, the last name I expected to flash on the screen was Zoe. Yeah, that's her, the doll whose sharp tongue and don't-care attitude had sent Jeremy and his mother, Linda, home with their tails between their legs. My lips curled into a smug grin as I swiped at the screen. "Hey, Zoe," her voice chirped through. "Hey, it's me. Just thought I'd ring you up, to say thanks." "For what?" I leaned back on my kitchen counter, a little confused but curious. "For yesterday. You were freaking badass," opening my eyes about Jeremy and Linda. That I laughed. It was a cold laugh, no joy in it. "Trust me, I didn't do anything. You saw them for what they are, all on your own." "Yeah, well, I just wanted to say I appreciate it, so thank you," she insisted. I could hear the genuine tone in her voice. "No problem. Just watch your back, okay?" We said our goodbyes and hung up the phone. It felt heavy in my hand as I tapped it against my chin, pondering the weirdness of it all. I had just been thanked by the woman who was fooling around with my ex-husband for helping her dodge a bullet. Life sure was strange. I mulled over my conversation with Zoe while I threw together a sandwich. The heel of the bread, some old cheese, and that last sorry slice of ham. I wasn't in the mood for anything fancy. I slumped down at my tiny kitchen table, taking a bite out of the uneven sandwich. I chewed slowly, the bread dry and sticking to the roof of my mouth. That could have been me, stuck in that cycle with Jeremy and Linda. But it wasn't. I had broken free. Later that day, I sat down with a pen and a notepad. I was old school like that. A thank you note. Never thought I'd write one of those to my ex's side chick. But here we were. I scribbled quickly, not fussing over the words, just letting them spill out raw. And I told Zoe she was welcome, that she was better off now, even if it didn't seem like it yet. I told her to keep her head high and to never let some two-timing jerk and his manipulative mom tell her who she was. And I signed it simply, with no flares or niceties. The note was brief, to the point. It was enough. I sealed it in an old envelope I found in a drawer, grabbed my keys, and headed out. I dropped the letter in the mailbox. No need for face-to-face. The words said it all. Walking back to my apartment, I kicked at a stray pebble. Life had given me lemons, and I didn't make lemonade. I threw those lemons back hard, and now I was helping others do the same. I had made peace with my past, with Jeremy, and surprisingly, I had made peace with Zoe too. The world kept turning, bizarre as it was, but at least for today, it was turning in my favor. The lawyer had one of them smirks when he handed me the last paper. "It's all yours now," he said, loud enough for Jeremy to hear across the room. "Nice doing business with you," I said, rolling my eyes a bit as I took the paperwork. The ink felt fresh and symbolic, the full stop at the end of a long, dragged-out story. Jeremy didn't say nothing. He just stood there, looking like someone had taken the ground out from under him, probably realizing his mom's plan had backfired. Linda, she had a face like thunder, her lips thin like she'd been sucking on lemons. "Can you believe this, after everything I did?" Linda's voice trailed off into a sort of hiss. I didn't answer, just clutched my papers a bit tighter as I walked out of the court building and into my little car. That old thing that survived the marriage far better than I did. I caught Linda's eye. She was staring at me from her big, shiny car, probably feeling her age and her mistakes. "You got what you wanted, huh?" Jeremy puffed out as he caught up with me, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched. I turned to him, the feeling of being finally free making me bold. "No, Jeremy, I got what I deserved. There's a difference." My phone beeped, a message from Stella, a friend who'd stuck by me like glue. "Drinks tonight?" I couldn't help but smile. Stella got it. "Hell yes," I texted back as I slipped into the driver's seat. There was a quiet, not the uneasy quiet like at Jeremy's place, but the kind that lets you hear yourself think. As the engine came to life with a familiar rattle, I felt something twist in my stomach. Excitement, nerves. My new home felt different now. I stepped inside, the echo of my footsteps the only welcome, but it was enough. My eyes roamed over the place. It was a mess of boxes and furniture that had seen better days, but it was mine. I spent the next few hours moving stuff around, unpacking, and tossing what I didn't need. I made room, my room, a space that felt more like me by the minute. Next day, I drove to work. Work was the kind of busy that kept thoughts at bay and made the day fly by. At lunch, the girls were all ears. "You okay, Jess?" the office gossip asked, her eyes all concern and curiosity. "Better than okay," I answered with no shadow of a lie. The drive home was meditative, the road stretched like my future. Uncertain, yeah, but mine all the same. That night, Stella and I hit the bar. It was loud and full, just like life should be. We tossed back drinks and threw our heads back with laughter that drew looks to new beginnings. Stella said, holding up her glass. "To tomorrow," I replied, and we drank to that, tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days to follow. Because that's the thing about tomorrow. It's always on its way. And now, so was I, ready for whatever the hell it decided to bring.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Collins. "Sign it or lose everything," Eleanor said, sliding the transfer papers across the table with a venomous smirk. Behind her, Rebecca casually flipped through a stack of cash, her painted nails skimming over the inheritance my grandfather had left me, like it was already hers. I never imagined I'd end up here, cornered in my own home, watching my mother-in-law and sister-in-law scheme to rob me blind. The inheritance wasn't theirs to touch. It wasn't even Thomas's. It was mine. Grandpa Jack left it to me, his little owl, because he trusted me to protect what he had built after my parents died. Eleanor's voice sliced through my spiraling thoughts. "This can go smoothly, Olivia, or it can go very badly, for you and Thomas." Her manicured fingers tapped a rhythm on the polished mahogany, a sound that had grated on my nerves for years. I forced myself to keep calm, my eyes flicking to the documents. This wasn't just $2.8 million. It was my future, my independence. "I don't understand," I said evenly. "Why do you think you're entitled to this? Grandpa Jack left this to me." Rebecca scoffed, her laugh sharp and cruel. "Oh, don't play innocent. You probably manipulated that poor old man into rewriting his will." Everyone knows he wasn't in his right mind at the end. My chest tightened with fury. Don't you dare. Grandpa Jack was sharper than anyone I've ever known, right up to the day he passed. You don't get to rewrite history just because it suits you. I turned to Eleanor, my voice firm. And you met him. You know exactly the kind of man he was. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Regardless, Rebecca's in the middle of a very messy divorce. She needs security. As family, you should be willing to help. Family, the word left a bitter taste in my mouth. In Eleanor's eyes, I'd never been part of their family. Not really. I was the kindergarten teacher from the wrong side of town, the woman who'd stolen her precious Thomas away from the society debutantes she deemed worthy. Where's Thomas? I asked, the realization hitting me that he wasn't here. Does he know about this? Eleanor's predatory smile widened. Thomas understands that family comes first. He agrees this is the best course of action for everyone involved. The words hit like a punch to the gut. He agreed? Without even telling me? I had such high hopes for you, Olivia. Eleanor sighed, feigning disappointment. But your refusal to support Rebecca in her time of need proves what I've always suspected. You don't belong in this family. Rebecca stepped closer, her hands gripping my shoulders with unsettling force. Sign the papers. Live. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I stared at the documents, Eleanor's smug face blurring as anger and betrayal clouded my vision. This wasn't just greed, it was control. Eleanor had spent years trying to undermine me, and now she thought she found the perfect way to force me out for good. And if I refuse? I asked quietly, already anticipating the answer. Eleanor leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Then I'll have no choice but to share some interesting discoveries about your teaching credentials. It would be a shame if the school board received an anonymous tip. My head snapped up. That's a lie. My credentials are flawless. I earned every inch of my degree. Perhaps, she replied, her tone syrupy sweet. But in the digital age, it's so easy to create discrepancies. And with my connections, I doubt you get the benefit of the doubt. Rebecca resumed her humming, counting cash with theatrical glee. Think of it as an investment in family harmony, she chirped. I clenched my fists under the table, my grandfather's voice echoing in my memory. Always stand your ground, little owl. Don't let anyone push you around. But this wasn't just about standing my ground. I needed to be smart, strategic. They'd always underestimated me, the quiet kindergarten teacher who didn't belong in their world of old money and power plays. My fingers curled around the pen, steadying as an idea began to form. Let them think they'd won. Slowly, deliberately, I signed the papers. Eleanor's triumph was palpable as she snatched them back. See? That wasn't so hard, was it? She cooed. Rebecca beamed, clutching the briefcase full of cash like it was a prize. They left without a backward glance, too busy celebrating to notice the faint glint of metal at my collar. My grandmother's brooch, worn to every family meeting, hadn't just been an heirloom. It was a recording device. Eleanor and Rebecca thought this was the end of the game. They had no idea it was only the beginning. The next few weeks were a masterclass in patience. While Eleanor and Rebecca paraded their victory like peacocks, I perfected my role as the docile, defeated daughter-in-law. But beneath the surface, I was methodically setting the pieces into place. I can't believe how calm you are about this, Lisa, my best friend, said as we sat in our favorite cafe. Her voice carried a mix of outrage and disbelief. They stole your inheritance, Olivia. $2.8 million. I stirred my latte slowly, watching the foam swirl. Remember when I told you my grandfather was just a simple accountant? I said, my voice quiet but firm. That wasn't entirely true. Before his retirement, Grandpa Jack had been a forensic accountant for the FBI, specializing in exposing financial fraud. Growing up, he made it our special game. While other kids played tag, I learned to follow money trails, uncover irregularities, and piece together hidden schemes. The money was never the endgame, Lisa, I explained, setting my cup down. It was the bait. I opened my laptop, revealing a digital vault of evidence I'd been compiling for years. Every suspicious transaction from Eleanor's real estate firm, every shady property deal, every blatant instance of tax evasion, all meticulously documented. The recording of them threatening me was just the final piece. I continued, scrolling through files. But this is the real weapon. The next day, I visited James Morton, one of Grandpa Jack's old colleagues and now a senior partner at Sterling and Morton Law. He smiled as I walked in, pulling a thick envelope from his desk drawer. "Your grandfather asked me to hold on to these until you needed them," he said, sliding it across the polished wood. Inside was the crown jewel of evidence, a detailed web of Eleanor's most intricate schemes: shell companies, money laundering, and fraudulent real estate transactions, painstakingly documented by my grandfather over the years. "There's one more thing," James said, handing me a USB drive. "He left this too. Said you'd know what to do when the time came." That evening, Thomas finally broached the subject of my attitude since signing over the inheritance. "Mom says you've been cold at family dinners," he started, his tone accusatory. "Can't you just appreciate that we're helping Rebecca through a tough time?" I studied my husband carefully, feeling a pang of pity more than anger. "Tell me, Thomas," I asked, my voice steady, "did you even hesitate when your mother suggested taking my inheritance? Did you think about me at all?" His silence said everything. The next morning, I booked a meeting with Eleanor's fiercest rival, Victoria Kane. For years, Victoria had tried to expose Eleanor's fraudulent dealings, but she never had enough evidence. Victoria's eyes widened as she reviewed the files I brought. "This is staggering," she breathed. "With this, we cold." "Destroy her," I finished, cutting her off. "But that's not the goal. Not yet." I outlined my plan, watching as Victoria's smile grew with each detail. By the time I left her office, we had a pact that would change the game entirely. Sunday dinner arrived and Eleanor was in rare form. She gloated about Rebecca's new car, bought with my inheritance, as Rebecca grinned smugly. "Oh, Olivia," Rebecca said sweetly, "I thought you'd like to know. I'm using some of the money to open a prep school. Isn't that perfect? We'll practically be colleagues." The irony nearly made me laugh. They still saw me as the naive kindergarten teacher, blissfully unaware of their games. They had no idea what tomorrow would bring. As I helped Eleanor with the dishes, playing the dutiful daughter-in-law one final time, she patted my head condescendingly. "See, Olivia? This is what family harmony looks like. Things are so much better when you cooperate." I dried the last plate and smiled faintly, my voice even. "You're right, Eleanor. Everything is exactly as it should be." Walking home that night, I checked my phone. A message from Victoria awaited. "Everything's ready. Operation Karma starts tomorrow." I thought of Grandpa Jack, his words echoing in my mind. The best revenge is letting them think they've won, until the moment they realize they've lost everything. Tomorrow, Eleanor and Rebecca would finally learn who I truly was, not just a kindergarten teacher, but my grandfather's there in every way that mattered. I typed one word back to Victoria: begin. Monday morning arrived with thunderclouds, an omen, perhaps, for what was about to unfold. I sat in Victoria Kane's office, eyes fixed on the screens as our carefully laid plan came to life. Channel 7 news breaking story: major fraud investigation launched into Collins' real estate empire. The anchor announced, "Anonymous sources have provided evidence of extensive money laundering and tax evasion." My phone lit up with notifications. Thomas's name appeared 6 times in a row. I ignored every call. "They've arrived," Victoria said, nodding toward the security feed. Eleanor and Rebecca stormed into the Collins real estate lobby, their faces pale and frantic. Minutes later, every local news station aired the recording of their inheritance extortion, blasting their threats for the world to hear. "This is only the beginning," I murmured, my grandfather's voice echoing in my mind. "Time for phase 2. Victoria picked up her phone and made the call we'd rehearsed for weeks. Within hours, her company announced a hostile takeover of Collins' real estate, fortified by the mountain of evidence we provided. Stock prices plummeted, dragging Eleanor's carefully curated empire down with them. Eleanor's call came exactly when I expected. "What have you done?" she screeched, her voice shrill with desperation. "You vindictive little—" "Me?" I interrupted, calm and measured. "I'm just a kindergarten teacher, remember? But you might want to ask Rebecca about those shell companies she's been managing for you, the ones in her name." The line went silent. Then, barely a whisper, "How did you?" "My grandfather taught me well," I said, my tone like steel. "And as for the inheritance you coerced me into signing over, it's being returned with interest. Fraud under duress doesn't hold up well in court, especially with recorded proof." Rebecca's meltdown on social media was almost theatrical. "You ruined everything," she raged in a post. "We were trying to help you fit in." I replied with a single line, "Karma sends her regards." By evening, Thomas came storming into the house, waving papers. "The company's gone. Mom's being investigated." "What did you do?" I handed him a manila envelope. "Divorce papers." I figured while the lawyers were already busy, we might as well make it official. His face crumpled. But I love you." "No, Thomas," I said, my voice cold. "You loved having someone your mother could control. That person doesn't exist anymore." The aftermath was swift. Eleanor's empire crumbled in weeks. Rebecca's divorce settlement was reopened when her fraudulent finances were exposed. And Thomas? He learned too late what it meant to bet on the wrong team. 6 months later, I stood in my new office at Kane and Collins Real Estate. Victoria's insistence on the partnership had been non-negotiable. Above my desk hung 2 frames, my grandfather's photo and my teaching degree. I still kept my kindergarten job. Some battles were worth fighting, but so were the simple joys. "Miss Collins," my assistant called from the door. "Your 2 o'clock is here." "Something about discussing terms?" Eleanor stepped in, unrecognizable in her plain attire. No designer suits, no sparkling diamonds, just a woman stripped of the power she once wielded. "Olivia," she began, her voice trembling. "I've come to beg." "No need," I interrupted, folding my hands on the desk. "The terms are simple. Admit everything, return every penny you stole, and I'll ensure you avoid jail time." I smiled, the same smile she once used to dismiss me. After all, isn't that what family does? Help each other. She flinched, hearing her own words turned back on her. Later that evening, I placed a bouquet of flowers on my grandfather's grave. The cool breeze carried a sense of closure. "You were right, Grandpa," I whispered. "Sometimes karma needs a little help." As I stood, my phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. Another merger opportunity. My new life called, full of potential and promise. Eleanor and Rebecca thought they were stealing an inheritance. Instead, they gave me something far more valuable. The push to become the person I was always meant to be. They say karma finds everyone eventually, but sometimes she needs someone to open the door and show her where to strike. Hi, I'm Olivia Thompson, and 3 months ago, my sister-in-law Diana turned my life upside down. She showed up at our doorstep with 3 oversized suitcases and a sob story about her failed marriage. What was supposed to be just a few days quickly spiraled into chaos, with my mother-in-law Margaret orchestrating a complete upheaval of my home, including demoting me to the unfinished basement so Diana could claim our master bedroom. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. From the moment I married Michael 2 years ago, Margaret and Diana made it clear I was an outsider. The help Diana once hissed to her friend at our wedding, thinking I couldn't hear. But Michael was different, supportive, loving, and quick to shut down their digs. At least he used to be. The night Diana arrived, mascara streaked down her cheeks as she collapsed dramatically into Michael's arms. "Mark left me," she sobbed. "He's been cheating for months." Michael shot me a pleading look, and I nodded. Of course we'd help. "You can take the guest room," I offered, already grabbing fresh linens. But Diana's eyes flitted to our bedroom door, ajar just enough to reveal the king-size bed and bay windows I painstakingly decorated. "The guest room." Margaret's voice crackled through Diana's phone on speaker. I hadn't realized she was listening. "That tiny, dusty space? Absolutely not. Diana needs proper rest after her trauma." "Mom, I don't want to impose," Diana murmured, though she made no move to object. "Nonsense," Margaret snapped. "Michael, your sister needs support. Olivia can make do elsewhere. She's young and adaptable. Isn't that right, dear?" The way she said dear made my teeth grind. Before I could respond, Michael shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe just for a few days, honey. Diana's really upset." And just like that, I lost my bedroom. Diana moved into the master suite, complete with a memory foam mattress I'd saved for months to buy. I ended up in the guest room, but Margaret wasn't finished. The next morning, she marched in with a contractor in tow. "The guest room's air quality is atrocious," she announced, brandishing a device that looked suspiciously like a phone screensaver. "Diana's allergies would flare up. We'll need to renovate. Olivia, you understand." And where am I supposed to sleep? I asked, watching my belongings get hauled out. Margaret's gaze slid to the basement door. There's plenty of space down there, just needs a little elbow grease. Think of it as a project, something to keep you busy. Michael started to object, but Diana burst into tears. I should have just gone to a hotel, she wailed. That sealed my fate. The basement was dark, damp, and littered with old Christmas decorations and exposed pipes. It was ironic, really, my interior design business was thriving. Yet I found myself laying a cot between a water heater and a stack of dusty boxes. It's just temporary, Michael assured me. But as days turned into weeks, Deanna's recovery became a parade of wine nights and spa days. Funded, no doubt, by Mark's cheating money. The master bath became her personal vanity, while my toiletries were relegated to a rusty shelf near the basement sink. Margaret visited daily, her criticism wrapped in a sugary smile. Olivia, dear, I noticed the upstairs windows could use a cleaning. Though I suppose you wouldn't know from down here. Or, I'm teaching Diana your lasagna recipe. She's such a natural. Poor thing needs something to keep her mind off things. The final straw came at Sunday dinner. Margaret arrived with a real estate agent in tow and announced, "We found the perfect condo for Diana, right in Olivia's office building." Convenient, isn't it? Diana chimed in, flashing a grin. "I can even help with your design business. Mom said you've been overwhelmed lately." I never said, I started, but Margaret waved me off. "We're all family, dear. Diana's been such a blessing already. She even redecorated your old bedroom. It looks stunning." I clenched my fork, picturing my carefully curated decor, now covered in Diana's chaotic Pinterest knockoffs. "Actually," I said, my voice sharper than I intended, "my business isn't a family venture. And I don't need help." The room went silent. Margaret's smile tightened. "We'll discuss it later," she said, her tone icy. "Diana, show Olivia the paint samples you picked for the basement. Since you'll be staying longer, we should make it livable." Paint samples. For my basement exile. I stood abruptly, knocking over my water glass. "I need some air," I muttered, heading for the door. As I stepped outside, I heard Diana's theatrical whisper, "See, Mom? I told you she's been so unstable. Michael, we're just worried about her." I sat in my car, gripping the wheel, when my phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Lily lit up the screen. 911. Pipe burst in my kitchen. Need your expertise ASAP. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. On my way, I typed back. Sometimes a crisis is exactly what you need, and Lily's kitchen wasn't the only thing I planned to fix. I pulled into Lily's driveway, my mind churning with frustration over Diana's latest move. Inside, the smell of damp wood hit me immediately. Her kitchen was a wreck, with water-stained cabinets and warped flooring. "It's bad," Lily admitted, grimacing as she handed me a coffee. "But you look worse." Spill. We settled into her living room, and the words poured out. Diana's melodrama, Margaret's constant interference, Michael's inability to stand up for me. By the end of my rant, Lily's face had gone from sympathetic to stone-cold furious. "So let me get this straight," she said, setting her mug down with deliberate precision. "Your sister-in-law moves in, takes over your bedroom, and now she's scheming to take over your business. And Michael's just letting this happen." "He's stuck in the middle," I said weakly, though even I didn't believe it anymore. "No, he's stuck under his mother's thumb," she shot back. Grabbing her phone, she started scrolling. "You remember Karen from college? She's a real estate lawyer now. And I think you need to hear what she has to say about tenant rights." "Tenant rights?" I repeated, confused. Lily fixed me with a knowing look. "You're on the deed, right? Equal ownership with Michael?" I nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. "Then legally, they can't push you out of your own bedroom. Diana doesn't have a single right to be there." For the next 2 hours, Lily, Karen, on speakerphone, and I formed a battle plan. Karen walked us through everything: property laws, business protections, even tenant agreements. By the time I left, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: empowered. The house was quiet when I returned. Upstairs, the flicker of the TV confirmed Diana was comfortably ensconced in my bedroom. Michael was snoring softly in his recliner, a half-empty beer on the table beside him. I stared at him for a long moment, debating. Then I made my decision. "Michael," I said, shaking his shoulder. He jolted awake, blinking groggily. "What's wrong?" We need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. Now. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. Honey, can't this wait until morning? No, it can't. This stops tonight, Michael. Either Diana moves to the guest room, or I'm moving out and taking half the business accounts with me. That woke him up. What? You can't. I can. I spoke to a lawyer today. Funny thing about joint assets in a marriage, they're joint. I crossed my arms, forcing him to meet my gaze. I don't want to do this, but I will if you keep letting your family treat me like this. Michael stared at me, his expression shifting from confusion to guilt. I didn't realize, I knew things were tense, but... Tense? I interrupted, my voice rising. Michael, I'm sleeping in a basement next to the water heater while your sister throws wine parties in our bedroom. And now she's eyeing my business too. His face went pale. What are you talking about? Before I could respond, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Diana appeared in the doorway, wearing my silk robe and holding a glass of wine. Everything okay down here? She asked sweetly, though her tone was anything but. Actually, no, I said, standing. We're having a private conversation, Diana. Oh, I'm sure it's nothing Mom and I can't help with, she said, her voice dripping with Fox concern. Michael, you don't have to listen to this. I'll call Mom. No, Michael said, cutting her off. No more calling Mom. This is between us. For a moment, Diana's mask slipped, revealing pure rage. But she recovered quickly, pressing a hand to her chest. Michael, I can't believe you're taking her side. After everything I've been through. Enough, Michael said, his voice firm. Diana, you need to move to the guest room, tonight. Diana's eyes narrowed, her usual tears failing to materialize. Fine, she snapped. But don't think this is over. She stormed upstairs, slamming the door to my bedroom. Michael turned to me, his shoulders slumping. I've been an idiot, he admitted quietly. Yes, you have. I said that my tone was softer now. But you're starting to fix it. The rest of the night was spent moving my things back upstairs. As I hung my clothes in the closet, Michael stood in the doorway watching me. I'll call the locksmith in the morning, he said, and maybe we should look into counseling. I nodded, hope blooming in my chest. That's a good idea. For the first time in months, I slept in my own bed. But the battle wasn't over. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Diana sitting in my chair, Margaret beside her with a folder full of papers. We need to talk business, Margaret said smoothly, her smile as sharp as a blade. Family business. I stood in the doorway of my office, taking in the scene. Diana was lounging in my chair, spinning lazily side to side as though she owned the place. Margaret stood beside her, a picture of calculated poise, her handbag dangling from her arm like a weapon. They didn't even have the decency to wait for me to arrive before staging their coup. Morning, I said evenly, stepping inside and setting my coffee down. What's this? A hostile takeover. Margaret smiled thinly, sliding a stack of papers across the desk. Not hostile. Practical. We've drawn up some documents to restructure the company, make it more family inclusive. I picked up the papers and quickly skimmed them, my stomach turned. They wanted me to sign over 51% of my company, essentially giving them control of everything I'd built. You can't be serious, I said, my voice sharp as I dropped the papers back onto the desk. Serious as a heart attack, Diana said smugly, propping her chin on her hand. And you might want to reconsider. Mom's had a chat with the Hendersons. They're not too pleased with your recent behavior. My breath caught. The Hendersons' renovation project was my biggest account. If I lost it, it could tank my reputation. You've been talking to my clients? I asked, ice creeping into my tone. Blackmail is such an ugly word, Margaret said, her tone smooth, but sometimes it's necessary to protect the family's interests. After last night's little spectacle, you've left us no choice. I laughed bitterly. My spectacle? You mean exposing Diana's lies about her divorce? Diana shot forward in her chair, her smirk replaced by a glare. Watch it, Olivia. Things can get very messy for small business owners if the wrong people hear the wrong things. The office door swung open before I could reply. Karen walked in, her heels clicking against the floor, and Mark, Diana's ex-husband, followed close behind. Oh good, Karen said, her voice light. Everyone's here. Saves us the trouble of making this a two-act play. Diana shot up from the chair like it was on fire. Mark? What are you doing here? Filing fraud charges, he said flatly, his gaze locking onto Diana. You emptied our accounts, Diana. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Margaret stepped forward, her composure faltering for the first time. Now, see here. Careful, Karen interjected smoothly, holding up her phone. I'd think twice about denying anything. Olivia has recordings of everything you just said. Threats, blackmail, defamation, all admissible in court. Diana's face went pale. You can't use those. I can, I said, cutting her off. Company policy. All business meetings are recorded. The acoustics in here are fantastic, by the way. Margaret sputtered, but Karen wasn't done. She slid 2 more papers onto the desk. This is a cease and desist order preventing either of you from contacting any of Thompson Design's clients. And if you so much as breathe in Olivia's direction without her consent, we'll file this restraining order too. Michael will never let you do this, Margaret hissed. You're tearing this family apart. Michael's voice came from behind her. No, Mom, you are. He stepped into the room, his expression grim. And Olivia isn't alone anymore. Diana's mask cracked completely. Mark, please, she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. This is all just a misunderstanding. Let me explain. Explain it to the court, Mark interrupted coldly. I'm done. Margaret's hands trembled as she clutched her handbag. You'll regret this, she snapped, her voice shaking with fury. Both of you. No, I said, my voice calm and steady. We won't. Now get out of my office. Margaret pulled Diana toward the door, but not before throwing one last venomous glare in my direction. This isn't over, she spat. I look forward to your next attempt, I replied, smiling coolly. It'll be fun to shut that down, too. Once the door closed behind them, the room felt lighter, like a storm had passed, leaving fresh air in its wake. Karen turned to me, a triumphant grin on her face. That went better than expected. Mark, thank you for coming. He nodded, his expression softening. It was the least I could do. I'm glad you're standing up to her. After they left, Michael pulled me into his arms. I am so sorry, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. For everything, for not standing by you sooner. I looked up at him, my heart aching and hopeful at once. We'll fix it, I said. Together. The coming weeks saw a cascade of victories. Diana was charged with fraud, and Margaret's influence over Michael crumbled. The Hendersons, it turned out, had never even spoken to Margaret, and their project continued as planned. They even referred me to 3 new clients. Michael and I began couples counseling, untangling years of manipulation and rebuilding trust. Slowly, we found our way back to each other. 2 months later, as I sat in my home office, now a serene, productive space, I smiled at a text from Lily. Just saw Diana at Starbucks. She's a barista now. Karma's beautiful, isn't it? I laughed softly, setting my phone down. On my desk was a photo from our housewarming party, a celebration of a home free of toxic interference. Life isn't perfect, and family is complicated. But sometimes, standing your ground and fighting for yourself is the only way forward. And when you have people who truly love and support you, even the hardest battles are worth it. Hey everyone, I'm Jennifer Wu. I thought I'd inherited a legacy, 3 generations of family wealth, after my husband's tragic accident. But his mother and sister had different plans, armed with fake evidence and a sinister agenda. The day everything unraveled started just like any other. I was at my dental practice, focused on patient files, when my receptionist hurried in. Dr. Wu, your mother-in-law is here. She seems upset. Before I could respond, Eleanor Chen stormed through the door, clutching her designer handbag like it was a weapon. How dare you? She spat, tossing a manila envelope onto my desk. After everything we've done for you. Her hand, usually steady and composed, trembled as she pointed an accusing finger at me. Behind her, Melissa, my sister-in-law, leaned casually in the doorway, her usual smug grin firmly in place. I opened the envelope, my stomach twisting as staged photos spilled out. They depicted me with a man I didn't even recognize, entering a hotel, having dinner, holding hands. Each photo was meticulously crafted, complete with forged timestamps that painted a damning timeline, supposedly stretching back months before Michael's accident. These are fake, I said firmly, my voice steady despite the storm churning inside me. I don't even know this man. Melissa took a step forward, feigning concern. Oh, Jennifer. We didn't want to believe it either, but then we found these. She produced more papers, bank statements showing transfers I never authorized. Secret accounts, hidden funds. While my brother was dying, you were plotting your escape with your lover, weren't you? My mind raced back to that fateful night 6 months ago. Michael and I had been driving home from his parents' estate after dinner. He was animated, telling me about his plans to modernize Chen Investments once he took over. Dad's retiring next month, he had said, his eyes bright with excitement. The company will be ours, Jen. Everything we've dreamed of. Then, out of nowhere, the truck ran the red light. I survived. Michael didn't. You know this is all a lie, I said, rising to my feet. Michael and I were happy. We were building a future together. Eleanor's expression turned ice cold. Were you? Then explain this. She thrust her phone at me, playing a video. It showed me arguing with Michael in his office. My voice rang out clearly. I can't take this anymore. I wish I'd never married into this family. I remembered that moment vividly. It wasn't real. It was a theater rehearsal. Melissa had been directing one of her amateur plays, and Michael had helped me rehearse my lines. We'd been laughing between takes, but in this doctored version, the laughter was gone and only the tension remained. That's from a rehearsal, I protested. Melissa, you were there. You were directing. But Melissa merely shook her head, feigning pity. You're grasping at straws, Jennifer. We have proof, photos, bank records, even your so-called escape plans. Lying won't help you now. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. Did you really think we'd let our family's legacy fall into the hands of a gold digger? That we'd stand by while you inherited everything? And then it hit me. This wasn't just an attack on my character, it was a plot to steal Michael's inheritance. His grandfather had built Chen Investments from the ground up, turning it into an empire worth millions. The will was clear. In the event of Michael's death, the entire estate would pass to me. Unless, of course, I was proven unfaithful. You set this up, I said, glaring at Melissa. She had always resented that Michael was chosen to lead the company over her. You fabricated all of it. The photos, the video, the bank statements. Do you have proof? Melissa asked sweetly. Because we certainly do. And once the board sees it, how do you think they'll react to Michael's unfaithful widow taking control? Eleanor gathered the damning documents and tucked them back into her envelope. You have two options, Jennifer. Sign over your inheritance quietly or watch us destroy everything. Your career, your reputation, your life. She smiled coldly. Choose wisely. As they walked out, I stood motionless, staring at the mess they'd left behind. My reflection in the window looked pale and shaken, just how they wanted me to look. But beneath the shock, something else stirred. Determination. Fury. They thought they had me cornered, but they didn't realize who they were dealing with. Before I became a dentist, I put myself through college by working in its security. And if they wanted to play games with fabricated evidence, they were about to find out they weren't the only ones who knew how to manipulate digital trails. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Marcus, I need your help. How fast can you analyze some doctored photos and videos? The game had begun, and I had every intention of winning. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, driving home in the fading twilight. Scenarios ran through my mind, each worse than the last. Eleanor and Melissa had clearly orchestrated this attack over months. But they overlooked one crucial flaw. Digital footprints always leave a trail. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed someone waiting on my doorstep. It was David, Michael's best friend and business partner. His expression was grave. Jen, we need to talk, he said as I got out of the car. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They've received some concerning evidence. Let me guess, I said as I unlocked my door, motioning for him to come inside. Photos, videos, and bank statements. David followed me, looking uneasy. They're claiming you had an affair, that you planned to sell your shares after inheriting. Melissa presented everything to the board earlier today. Of course she had. They weren't just pressuring me to give up the inheritance. They were dismantling every pillar of support I had. The photos are fake, David. The video was from a theater rehearsal, and the bank statements were forged, I said firmly, opening my laptop, and I can prove it. David hesitated, then sighed. Jen, I want to believe you. But what? I snapped, frustration boiling over. Melissa's evidence looks too polished, so it must be real. She's had months to fine-tune her lies, ever since Michael. My voice caught in my throat. Ever since the accident. Before David could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. I put him on speaker. Jen, you need to see this, he said. Those photos? They were generated using high-end ad technology. This wasn't your average Photoshop job. It was expensive, top-tier work. As for the video, I've isolated splicing artifacts. It's a composite, pieced together from multiple clips. Can you prove it? I asked, my heart pounding. Better, Marcus replied confidently. I traced the software purchase. Someone bought access to advanced AI imaging tools 3 months ago. The payment came from an offshore account, but guess what? It was tied to a Chen Investments credit card. Melissa's? I guessed. Exactly. She tried to cover her tracks. But she's not as tech-savvy as she thinks. Oh, and about those bank statements, they were fabricated using internal templates stolen from Chen Investments' system. The access logs show. Eleanor's credentials. I finished already knowing the answer. Bingo, Marcus confirmed. David's face drained of color. The CEO's wife using company resources to forge evidence? This could ruin them. It should, I said quietly. Now, pull up the security footage from March 15th. David did as I asked, and we watched the unedited video. It showed everything. Michael and me rehearsing lines, Melissa directing, even Eleanor standing by the door, watching. There was no room for doubt. The raw footage completely undermined their narrative. Marcus's voice came through again. One more thing. I found emails between Eleanor and Melissa dating back to shortly after Michael's accident. They were working with a private investigator, coordinating surveillance on you and planning how to present their fake evidence. David ran a hand through his hair. If you present all this tomorrow, you'll have enough to not only clear your name but also expose them. I nodded. I'll need your support. Eleanor and Melissa think they've already won. They have no idea I've uncovered their scheme. With David's help, I worked through the night alongside Marcus, compiling a detailed presentation. We gathered everything, proof of the AI purchases, email correspondence outlining their conspiracy, forensic analysis debunking the photos and videos, and most importantly, the raw security footage that exposed the truth. At dawn, David handed me one final weapon, Michael's personal journal. He'd found it in the office safe, tucked away where no one had thought to look. The last entry, written just days before his death, revealed everything. Mom and Melissa are pressuring me to change the inheritance, but I won't. They've never understood. This company isn't about money or control. It's about legacy, integrity, and trust. Jen embodies all of that. She's the only person I trust to carry on Grandpa's vision. No matter what they try, this is my decision. The company will go to her. I clutched the journal to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even in death, Michael was still protecting me. Just then, my phone buzzed again. A message from Eleanor. The board meeting starts in 1 hour. Last chance to sign over the inheritance and walk away quietly. I smiled, a new sense of resolve hardening in my chest as I typed my response. Don't worry, Eleanor. I wouldn't miss this meeting for the world. They thought they'd orchestrated my downfall. Instead, they had paved the way for their own undoing. I arrived at Chen Investments 15 minutes early, clutching a USB drive with irrefutable evidence. Eleanor and Melissa were already in the boardroom, looking every bit the picture of polished confidence. Their smiles wavered only slightly when they saw my calm, collected demeanor. Still trying to save face, Melissa muttered as I settled into my seat. Just sign the papers and leave with some dignity. The board members filed in, their expressions serious. Eleanor stood composed and poised in a designer suit, ready to make her case. Thank you for coming. Today you must address some deeply troubling revelations about Jennifer Wu's character and activities during my son's life. She began her presentation. Photo after photo, video after video, and forged bank statements, each one more damning than the last. I sat still, watching as the fabricated evidence unfolded. Board members exchanged disapproving glances, their faces a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. And now, Eleanor finished, I asked the board to vote on removing Jennifer Wu from her inherited position and transferring control to the rightful heir, my daughter, Melissa. I stood up, calm but resolute. Before we proceed with the vote, I have evidence of my own to present. I inserted my USB drive into the computer, glancing briefly at Eleanor's tightening expression. Let's begin with the photos. On screen, the technical analysis appeared, confirming the photos were AI generated. Pay for with a Chen Investments Company card. I added, displaying the transaction records. By you, Melissa. The room filled with hushed murmurs. Melissa's face drained of color. The video? I continued. Here's the original, unedited footage from the security cameras. As you can see, we were rehearsing for Melissa's amateur theater production, and these emails between Eleanor and Melissa reveal their entire scheme to fabricate evidence and steal my inheritance. Eleanor's composure cracked. This is madness, she spat. You're fabricating evidence to destroy us. Like you fabricated everything to ruin me? I shot back, pulling Michael's journal from my bag. David found this in your office safe. Shall I read Michael's last entry about why he chose me to lead Chen Investments? Melissa lunged for the journal, but David stepped forward, blocking her. It's over, he said softly. The truth is out. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. Mrs. Chen, Miss Chen, these are grave accusations. Using company resources to create fraudulent documents, attempting to steal an inheritance through deception. These are criminal acts. You can't prove anything. Melissa screamed, though her voice wavered with panic. Actually, I said Marcus has already delivered all the evidence to the authorities. I wouldn't be surprised if they're currently seizing your computers. Eleanor slumped in her chair, the last remnants of her carefully constructed facade crumbling. We were protecting the family legacy, she whispered, her voice thick with defeat. You don't belong here. You don't deserve any of this. No, I replied firmly. You were protecting your own interests. Michael chose me because I share his values, integrity, honesty, trust. Everything you and Melissa sought to destroy. The board's vote was swift and unanimous. Not only would I retain my inherited position, but Eleanor and Melissa would now face criminal charges for fraud and corporate espionage. As security escorted them out of the room, I heard Melissa's final, venomous words. This isn't over. But it was over. Their elaborate plot had fallen apart because they underestimated both my ability to uncover the truth and Michael's foresight. They'd never understood that a true family legacy isn't about bloodlines or power. It's about the principles that endure. 1 year later, Chen Investments was thriving under my leadership. The scandal made brief headlines, but our clients remained loyal, trusting in the values Michael's grandfather had instilled. Eleanor and Melissa accepted plea deals to avoid jail time, but they were permanently barred from the company. Every so often, I visit Michael's grave to update him on our progress. The growth of the company, the changes I'm making, the legacy I'm preserving. And when the wind rustles through the trees, I swear I can hear his voice echoing, just as it did in that final journal entry. You're the only one I trust to carry on his legacy the right way. He was right to trust me, and I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. My name is Rachel Chen, and at 35, I'm the proud owner of a thriving bakery chain. But last year, my mother-in-law, Linda, made it her mission to turn my success into a battleground. I'll never forget the day she strolled into my flagship store, her smirk as sharp as a knife. Your croissants are stale, dear, she declared, her voice ringing out across the crowded cafe. No wonder your sales are dropping. I clenched my jaw to keep the tears at bay. Linda had already cost me a crucial business deal earlier that week, yet here she was again, sowing chaos. The irony? Just hours before, she'd asked me to invest my savings in her retirement fund. But this wasn't the start of Linda's campaign against me. To understand how it all unraveled, you'd have to go back 5 years to when sweet success was just a dream. A small corner bakery that became the center of my world. Baking had always been my solace, my escape after losing both my parents. When I met Michael, Linda's son, he became my biggest cheerleader. You're incredible, Rach, he'd say, biting into whatever new creation I'd whipped up. The world needs this. With his encouragement and every penny of my savings, I opened my first shop in downtown Seattle. Those early days were grueling. I'd wake at 3 a.m. to bake, run the counter, and close up long after sunset. Slowly, the hard work paid off. My matcha cream puffs and honey lavender croissants turned heads, and soon Sweet Success was the talk of the town. That's when Linda began to take notice. "Rachel, darling," she said at Sunday dinner one evening, her tone as sugary as my frosting. "I had no idea your little hobby could actually make money." Her words stung, but I smiled politely. After all, she was family. Years later, when I was ready to expand, Linda's interest grew sharper. A prime spot at Pike Place Market became available, and with a newly approved loan, I was ready to take the leap. The night I shared the news, Linda's eyes glinted with an intensity I should have heeded. "Oh, sweetie," she said, swirling her wine. "Expanding too quickly is risky. Remember Jenny's cupcakes? They crashed and burned. But don't worry, I have years of business experience. I'd be happy to guide you." I declined, thanking her but making it clear I had things under control. The next morning, my contractor called in a frenzy. Multiple code violations had been reported at the new location. The delays in repairs cost me 3 months and nearly $100,000. Later, I found out Linda was close friends with the inspector's wife. Still, I pressed on, and Sweet Success flourished. Our new Pike Place location was a hit, leading to franchise opportunities and a feature in Northwest Business Monthly. But Linda wasn't celebrating my achievements. Instead, she made her move during a family dinner. "Rachel, dear," she began with practiced sweetness, "I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, with my son's help, of course. His connections really opened doors for you, didn't they?" I nearly choked on my wine. "Actually, Linda, Michael and I have always kept our careers separate. He's incredibly supportive, but Sweet Success is my business." Her smile turned brittle. "Oh, so all those corporate orders from Michael's clients were just a coincidence." Before I could respond, she pivoted. "Well, since you're doing so well, we should discuss family obligations. Your father-in-law and I aren't getting any younger, and our retirement portfolio took a hit." She trailed off, waiting for me to connect the dots. When I didn't, she leaned in. "We'll need about $500,000 to maintain our lifestyle." The room fell silent. My hands trembled as I placed my fork down. "Linda," I said carefully, "Sweet Success is my company, built with my own savings and hard work. I'm reinvesting my profits into expansion, not personal loans." Her face darkened. "So this is how you repay family loyalty." That night, I realized Linda didn't see me as an entrepreneur or even as her son's wife. To her, I was a pawn in her games, and she was willing to destroy everything I built to get what she wanted. The next morning, I logged into my company's social media accounts and froze. Overnight, dozens of one-star reviews had been posted, accusing us of stale pastries and food poisoning. Our morning rush was half its usual crowd, whispers of the reviews spreading like wildfire. That's when Linda walked in, her smile cold as steel. "Your croissants are stale, dear," she said again, loud enough for everyone to hear. As I watched a potential corporate client slip out the door, I realized Linda wasn't just meddling, she was waging war. But Sweet Success wasn't just a business. It was my dream, my resilience, and my life's work. And I wasn't about to let Linda destroy it. The following weeks were a whirlwind of chaos, each morning unveiling a new crisis that bore Linda's invisible fingerprints. Wholesale orders were inexplicably canceled. Health inspectors began showing up unannounced during our busiest hours, spurred by anonymous complaints. Even our suppliers, long reliable, suddenly doubled their prices, citing vague market fluctuations. I confided in Michael, hoping he'd see what was happening, but he was caught between loyalty to his mother and support for me. "Babe, are you sure Mom's behind this?" he asked hesitantly one evening, glancing at the grim sales reports on my laptop. "Maybe it's just bad luck." I slammed the lid shut, the frustration bubbling over. "Bad luck doesn't send fake food poisoning reports to the health department." I shot back, then softened my tone. "I'm sorry. I'm watching everything I've worked for unravel, and your mother is enjoying every second of it." He sighed, torn but silent. That Sunday, Linda dealt her next blow. During our customary family dinner, she casually voiced her concerns about my mental state, ensuring everyone heard. "I'm worried about Rachel," she sighed dramatically, slicing into her roast beef with a calculated pause. "The stress of running a failing business can make people unstable. Maybe it's time to consider selling before things get worse." I gripped my water glass, barely containing my anger. "My business isn't failing, Linda. At least not without a little help." See what I mean? Linda turned to Michael, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. Paranoid accusations. Honey, maybe Rachel should see someone. I know an excellent therapist. That night, sleep eluded me. Restless, I reviewed our security camera footage from the bakery. A strange movement caught my eye. A familiar figure slipping into the kitchen after hours. Zooming in, my stomach churned. It was Linda, using the spare key Michael had for emergencies. The next morning, I checked our storage room and confirmed my worst fears. The premium Madagascar vanilla we use for our signature pastries had been replaced with cheap imitation extract. The high-end chocolate was swapped for low-grade cooking chocolate. Small, insidious changes that would erode our quality and reputation over time. I confronted Linda that evening in her perfectly curated living room. Armed with security footage and receipts, I laid out the evidence. She sat unfazed, sipping tea with a smug smile. Really, Rachel? Security footage? How desperate. She placed her cup down gracefully. There's still time to fix this. My retirement fund offer stands. I shook my head, the realization hitting me. This isn't about money anymore, is it? You just can't stand that I succeeded without you. Linda's smile vanished, replaced by a cold glare. You married into this family, dear. Everything you have, you owe to us. I'm giving you a choice. Fund our retirement or watch your little bakery empire crumble. I stood, my hands trembling with anger. No, Linda. I'm giving you a choice. Stop sabotaging my business, or I'll show Michael and everyone else exactly who you are. She laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. Who do you think I'll believe? The respected mother who's only looking out for her son? Or the unstable entrepreneur spiraling into a breakdown? As I left her house, my phone buzzed. It was a notification. Our largest corporate client, Michael's law firm, had just canceled all standing orders. The message was loud and clear. Linda wasn't done. But in her arrogance, she'd overlooked something crucial. There was a paper trail. The fake reviews? All traced back to her IP address. The supplier price hike? The owner was one of her golf buddies. And the security footage? That was just the start. I stayed up all night piecing it all together. Every coincidence, every sabotage attempt, every manipulative dig. 5 years of Linda's games laid bare in a meticulous dossier. The next morning would change everything. Linda thought she was dismantling my business piece by piece, but in truth, she handed me the tools to expose her. Not just to Michael, but to everyone who believed in her facade. As I finalized my plans, my phone lit up with a text from Linda. Last chance, dear. The retirement fund or your business. Choose wisely. I smiled, thinking of the meeting I'd scheduled with Michael and his father later that morning. Linda had no idea what was coming. Morning arrived, and I walked into Michael's law firm, clutching my evidence folder like a lifeline. His father, Richard, was already there, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. Rachel, what's this emergency meeting about? Before I could answer, Linda swept into the room, her sharp heels clicking on the polished floor. I got your text, Richard. What's she doing here? She froze when she saw the folder in my hands, her confidence faltering for the first time. Please have a seat, I said, keeping my voice steady as I set up my laptop. There's something everyone here needs to see. For the next 30 minutes, I presented my case. The security footage of Linda tampering with ingredients, screenshots of fake reviews linked to her IP address, emails from suppliers confirming her interference, bank records showing suspicious transfers made just before every health inspection. Michael's face darkened with each revelation. Mom, how could you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Linda's laugh was brittle, her composure unraveling. Oh, don't be ridiculous. She's making all this up because she can't handle running a business. Richard, surely you don't believe. The evidence speaks for itself, I interrupted, clicking to the next slide. And I've invited someone to join us. The door opened and Detective Sarah Morris stepped inside, her badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. Linda, breaking and entering, business sabotage, and attempted extortion are serious charges. I suggest you listen carefully to what Rachel has to say. Linda's face drained of color. You wouldn't dare. I'm family. Michael's voice was steady, but the disappointment was palpable. Family doesn't destroy family, Mom. Dad, show her the statement. Richard pulled out a printed document, his expression grave. Linda, I checked our accounts after Rachel came to me yesterday. We have more than enough for retirement. Care to explain why you've been moving money to a private account? Linda's mask crumbled completely as the truth spilled out. She'd been embezzling from their retirement fund for years to cover gambling debts. Forcing me to contribute was her desperate attempt to plug the holes before Richard noticed. I want to press charges, I said, my voice firm as I looked directly at Linda. But I'll drop them on two conditions. First, you publicly clear Sweet Success's name and reputation. Second, you step away from the family business and get professional help for your gambling. Linda glanced around the room, searching for support, but found none. Defeated, she nodded. Fine, she whispered. The following week, Linda issued a public apology that went viral. Due to personal challenges, I spread false claims about Sweet Success Bakery. These statements were entirely fabricated by me. Sweet Success upholds the highest standards of quality, and I deeply regret my actions. The apology was enough to restore faith in the business. Customers flooded back, drawn by both the story of redemption and our forgiveness special. All pastries half price for a week. Lines wrapped around the block, and Sweet Success emerged stronger than ever. Michael and I moved forward, setting clear boundaries with Linda. She entered treatment for her gambling addiction, and Richard became one of my most vocal supporters. A year later, Sweet Success expanded to 10 thriving locations. When Northwest Business Monthly featured us again, this time highlighting resilience in family businesses, Linda saw the article during a therapy session. You know, she told her counselor, I tried to tear Rachel down because I couldn't handle her success. Instead, I only proved how much she deserved it. Today, I write this from our new flagship store, watching happy customers enjoy our signature croissants. Fresh, flaky, and certainly not stale. Every challenge made us stronger, and Linda's journey toward redemption reminds me of something important. Success isn't just about building a business. It's about standing your ground when someone tries to tear you down. And sometimes the sweetest victory isn't revenge. It's watching someone who once sought your downfall confront their demons and find a path to change. Would you have pressed charges in my situation? Or was offering Linda a chance at redemption the right call? Share your thoughts below. My name is Catherine Walsh, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be homeless at 35, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am. It all started with a promise, a hollow one from my mother-in-law, Grace. She begged me to sell my house to save my sister-in-law, Amanda, from financial ruin, assuring me we'd live together as one big happy family. 2 weeks later, I found my belongings stuffed into trash bags on her front porch. Looking back, the warning signs were glaring, but I ignored them. It began 3 months ago at one of Grace's infamous Sunday dinners. Amanda sat at the table, eyes puffy and red, while Grace loomed over her like a general rallying her troops. It's just been so hard since Tom left, Amanda wailed, dabbing her face theatrically with a monogrammed napkin. The gambling debts. I can't handle it anymore. Her sobs tugged at my sympathy, even though they felt just a touch too polished, like a scene from a soap opera. Amanda's husband had walked out 6 months ago, leaving her saddled with massive, secret debts. The drama of it all was vintage Amanda. The lawyers say bankruptcy is my only option, she continued, her voice trembling. I'll lose everything, the house, the car, even Mom's antique collection. Grace's grip on Amanda's shoulder tightened as she turned her hawk-like gaze to me. We can't let that happen, can we, Catherine? Family helps family. I hesitated, offering a noncommittal nod, but the knot in my stomach tightened. Grace had that gleam in her eye, the same one she'd worn when she convinced my husband, Mark, to loan Amanda $20,000 from our wedding fund. We never saw a dime of it back. You know, Grace said, her voice syrupy with false sweetness, Catherine, your house is so big for just you and Mark. Why not sell it? The market's fantastic right now. I nearly choked on my wine. Sell our house? But, think about it, Grace cut me off smoothly. You could help Amanda wipe the slate clean. Everyone could live here together, one big happy family. Imagine the savings on utilities and upkeep. Mark shifted uneasily beside me. Mom, that's a huge decision. We need to. Of course, darling, Grace cooed, but her tone dripped with urgency. It's just that Amanda's bankruptcy hearing is in 2 weeks. Time is of the essence. Over the following days, Grace bombarded us with calls, oscillating between guilt-tripping and thinly veiled accusations of selfishness. "I just don't understand how you could let your own family suffer," she'd say, her disappointment unmistakable. Mark, ever the peacekeeper, tried to stay neutral, but Grace was relentless. Eventually, under the crushing weight of guilt and obligation, we caved. We listed my dream home, the one I'd worked so hard to buy, and it sold almost instantly. The day we handed Amanda the check for $90,000, Grace was practically glowing. "This is what family does," she declared, pulling Amanda into a hug that excluded me entirely. We moved into Grace's modest home, cramming our lives into her guest room. I tried to stay optimistic. "This is temporary," I told Mark, more to convince myself. "We'll rebuild." But the cracks in Grace's big happy family fantasy started showing almost immediately. Amanda's gratitude seemed superficial, and I often caught her exchanging whispers with Grace. Bit by bit, our belongings migrated from the guest room to the garage, one box at a time. I brushed it off, desperate to keep the peace. Until the day it all came crashing down. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I opened the front door to find my life stuffed into garbage bags and my place in the family erased. That rainy Tuesday morning, I returned from a grueling hospital shift to find my life in ruins. Every single one of our belongings sat in garbage bags on Grace's front porch, soaking in the cold drizzle. A bright yellow note fluttered on the door, its cheerful color mocking the words scrawled in bold, unapologetic handwriting. "Found a better use for the guest room. Grace." My hands trembled as I stared at the mess. I fumbled for my phone, my voice shaking as I called Mark. "They've thrown us out," I managed, tears blurring my vision. "All our things air." "That's impossible," Mark interrupted. Mom would. His words faltered, replaced by muffled voices in the background. Then I heard Grace's unmistakable tone, sharp and unyielding. "Tell your wife not to make a scene," she said, her voice cutting like a blade. "Amanda needs the guest room for her home office now that she's starting her business." I froze. "Her what?" "Amanda's new business," Grace repeated, like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. As if summoned by my disbelief, Amanda's Mercedes glided into the driveway, a sleek, brand-new model that gleamed even in the gray light. Gone were the traces of financial ruin she paraded weeks ago. She stepped out in designer clothes, her hair and makeup perfect, a stark contrast to the tearful, bedraggled woman who begged for our help. "Oh," she said lightly, spotting me on the porch. "You're still here." Her tone was casual, as though we were old acquaintances running into each other by chance. She glanced at my rain-soaked belongings and winced. "Didn't you see the note? Mom and I decided it'd be best if you and Mark lived separately for a while. You know, so he can focus on family priorities." "Family priorities?" I echoed, my voice hollow. "We sold our house to help you." She laughed then, sharp and cruel, a sound that sliced through the air like a whip. "And I'm so grateful," she said, her smile all teeth. "That money was exactly what I needed to start my luxury spa business. Mom's been helping me plan it for months. She said you'd never agree if you knew the truth, so—" She gave a little shrug, as if the betrayal were a minor inconvenience. "We had to get creative." I stood there stunned as she sidestepped my belongings like they were garbage littering her path. "By the way," she added, pausing at the door, "Mark's staying here. Mom convinced him it's best for everyone. You understand, right?" Through the window, I could see Grace watching us, her arms crossed, a smug smile tugging at her lips. She'd orchestrated everything, the sale of our house, our move into her home, and now this final, calculated blow. The worst part, when I called Mark again, his phone went straight to voicemail. An hour later, a single text buzzed on my screen. "Mom's right. I need time to think. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stood in the rain, staring at the words until they blurred. My life, my home, my marriage had dissolved in the span of a morning. But as I began loading my drenched belongings into my car, another realization struck me. This wasn't just about money. This was about power and control. A perfectly executed plan to strip me of everything I held dear. But what they hadn't counted on was this. I wasn't powerless. They might have blindsided me, but they'd made one fatal mistake. I had evidence, every text, every email, every lie Grace and Amanda had spun to manipulate us. They thought they'd won, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. What Grace and Amanda didn't realize was that I had a habit of documenting everything. Years as a nurse had taught me the value of meticulous records. Every text, every email, every family meeting filled with thinly veiled manipulation. I had it all saved, including Amanda's drunken confession at last week's dinner about how she and Grace had been planning their so-called investment opportunity for months. My first stop was Sarah's law office. Sarah had been my best friend since college and was now one of the toughest attorneys in town. Sitting in her sleek conference room, still in my damp scrubs, I spread out printed emails, texts, and voice recordings across the table. As Sarah skimmed through the evidence, her eyebrows climbed higher with each page. "This," she said, pointing to a particularly damning email where Grace laid out their scheme, "is textbook fraud. And here, Amanda outright admits the bankruptcy was exaggerated to pressure you into selling." "Can we prove it?" I asked, my voice wavering as I wrung my hands. Sarah smiled, a sharp, predatory grin that I'd seen her flash before big cases. "Oh, we can do better than prove it. Grace's biggest mistake. She put everything in writing." The next morning, Grace's carefully curated world began to unravel. First came the legal notice of fraud charges. Then the police showed up to investigate misappropriation of funds. But the real bombshell came when the local news picked up the story. Overnight, Grace went from a respected socialite to a pariah. "You can't prove anything," Grace sputtered at reporters camped outside her country club, her usual composure cracking. But her defiance crumbled when they played Amanda's recorded confession, broadcasted for everyone to hear. 3 days later, Mark finally called. His voice was shaky, breaking under the weight of guilt. "Kath, I had no idea," he said. "Mom swore she was just helping Amanda get back on her feet. I never thought." "Save it," I interrupted, my voice cold. "You chose them over me, over us." The court case was swift and devastating, for them. My documentation, coupled with Amanda's loose lips, left no room for doubt. The judge ordered Grace and Amanda to repay the full amount, plus damages. Amanda's spa, built with my stolen money, was seized and sold. Grace's reputation in her precious social circle was destroyed, replaced with whispers of scandal and betrayal. But the fallout didn't stop there. As news spread, other victims of Grace's schemes began to come forward. Amanda's ex-husband. He hadn't abandoned her. Grace had driven him off with similar tactics. 3 other daughters-in-law shared stories of manipulation and financial abuse that mirrored mine. Grace's web of deceit unraveled faster than anyone could have imagined. Today, I'm thriving. I live in a beautiful new condo, paid for with the settlement money. Mark still calls occasionally, pleading for a second chance, but some betrayals cut too deep to forgive. Yesterday, as I drove past Grace's house, I couldn't help but smile at the large for sale sign staked in the front yard. Karma, as it turns out, has a perfect sense of irony. Losing everything taught me more than I ever thought possible. It showed me my strength and resilience. It proved that the best revenge isn't just getting even, it's rising higher than they ever thought you could. To Grace, the mother-in-law who thought she could break me, thank you. You made me stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. Because I'm not just a survivor, I'm a warrior. And warriors don't just survive, they conquer.